Susan, welcome to the Retail Whore Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
I'm so grateful. Erin from Stationary HQ introduced us. And I will say, like, in talking to you, our first conversation, I was like, okay, you definitely need to be on the podcast. You're like one of those people that is like so vibrant and so amazing to listen to. So I cannot wait for people to hear what you do and your incredible story of how you landed where you are.
Yes. Yeah. It's been quite a journey. And I still feel like I'm just kind of at the beginning stages of it. So we'll see where it goes from here.
I'm so excited for people to hear. So tell everyone a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are.
Yes. So my name is Susan George. I am the CEO and founder of Mediary Marketing. And it started, so what we do is we handle social media management. So we help create high quality organic content for companies, brands, and then I also manage content creators and influencers. So I will broker brand deals between companies like Netflix, Athletic Greens, ASICS, New Balance, and then partner them with creators who would be a good fit, who audiences are a good fit. And I actually started this for my own personal career. So I've always been in the entertainment and music industry. And I was a full-time musician and living in Seattle. And after I kind of played the venues I wanted to play and knew most people in the scene, I just kind of felt like there wasn't a lot to move the needle of my career and expand and grow. And so I started really diving into personal branding on social media. And it was still kind of the whole influencer thing was still relatively new because I think this was in about 2014, 2012 or somewhere around in there. And so I just really started going hard on socials and posting what I was doing, posting all of my songs, doing a ton of cover videos. And that turned into brands reaching out to me to partner. And then it went into more of a holistic kind of campaign. So if a brand would reach out, I would talk about the visuals, how I would tie it into music or what I was doing. And then I also did lifestyle writing. So I'd write for a lot of publications in the local area. And those articles turned into content too, eventually. So what I would normally write in a piece, like these are the best date nights, I would also attach content to kind of showing that experience. And that turned into giving creators who had much bigger audiences than me, but didn't really know how to navigate the space. I started connecting with them and giving them advice. And it just kind of snowballed from there, where I was managing these content creators and brokering these deals. And it was to the point where it was becoming so successful. It was like, I have to just do this now. So it's been a wild ride, and with how much the industry has changes and continues to change. Yeah. But I love the storytelling aspect and really trying to create true, authentic connections through social media, because that's really what makes me love it.
I'm so glad you're here to talk about this, because we've had a couple of people talk social media, because it's obviously like the single most important free marketing tool that I think all of us have. And as retailers, like Crystal Media was on the show a few weeks ago, and she works with retailers and their social media. And I think a lot of retailers are very hesitant of getting on camera themselves and going live and doing stories, and their comfort level is much more behind, like somebody else go in front. But Crystal's always saying it is so important for people to get to know you. That is like the key, and it's trying to get people. So to have you on here and talk about this, and like maybe if you can give us some strategies and some tips. And I love the idea what you just talked about is how your blog and then went into examples and how that all worked. Because I still don't. Everything is content. I still don't. Have not successfully navigated my way through the blog part. Like I get really good and I keep doing it, and then it just falls to the wayside. So it'll be interesting to hear that. But I wanted to ask really fast though about your music career and what kind of music did you do?
So I did pop soul music, and so singer-songwriter. I play keys and guitar. I would say I play guitar enough. I play it very poorly. And so that's how I kind of got to know the apps so well and what works content-wise, because especially during the pandemic, when all the venues were shut down, I started doing weekly live streams. So it started with just TikTok because I thought it was an app that nobody was on, and I was having fun experiment with it. And it grew to where every Tuesday night we would do Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok lives with like a whole setup where we would just have 3 platforms running at the same time. And I actually just had someone recently, I did a show a couple weeks ago, and they said, I still remember your lives and how much that helped to kind of get through that isolating time.
Yeah.
So it was crazy because there'd be people that I didn't know previously from all over the world that would come meet every week at this time. And you kind of got to know them in a digital sense, but I really fell in love with you can really build community on here in a way where people are just kind of hungry for connection, especially back then. But yeah, so, and I'm still doing music now, just not as often. But I have a holiday album that I am almost done with that will come out on December 1st.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I'm excited about that. And it's cool to incorporate Mediary into all my music stuff now too, because we can kind of test out different marketing strategies on me, which is really non-consequential. So a lot of the things that have worked with me, or I've turned my husband into an influencer now too. He's got almost 100,000 followers on TikTok. And
what does your husband do?
So he's in the cannabis industry. He owns a company called Suncliff, and he was one of my, again, really fun to test out different strategies on his company too. And he just put some of his products on, there's no THC and no CBD, so nothing that would get you high, but just the elements of the plant that create certain experiences. And so you can kind of ship them wherever and have them wherever. And he launched it on TikTok Shop this last week, and they had $20,000 sales in 2 days.
It's crazy. I mean, the TikTok Shop, I mean, I had talked to 2 of my girlfriends, have a very well-known crystal business called Crystal Energy Muse, sorry. And they did a book called Crystal Muse. That's why I was very tongue-tied. But they were one of the first few people that were brought on to work with the influencers, because I don't even think many people know TikTok Marketplace now is like basically kind of going to become like an Amazon, but it's all led by influencers. So you think influencers sell a lot on Facebook, on just Instagram, now stick them on a platform where that's all they're really doing? I can only imagine.
And it used to be the big debate with more traditional kind of like fashion bloggers or influencers in the fashion industry or lifestyle industry. It used to be the race between, does Amazon have better commissions or does Like to Know It have better commissions? And now TikTok is just dumping money into this because this is where they want people to be. So it's incredible, the kind of success, and where literally if you have an audience, or even if you don't have a big audience, like my husband's company, I think they had like 50 followers, but he himself as the creator had a lot. So he was able to talk about the product on his platform. So while his company was making money, he was making commission from his audience. So, and the seller has the ability to choose how much they want to give the influencer or creator. So if you don't really want to do anything, it's the first time, because we've done a lot of digital ad campaigns across platforms, and I can talk a little bit about that too. But this is the first time where it's almost no cost, little effort by the brand or company, and then everything else is kind of done for you, where they're driving attention and sales for you.
Wild.
It's insane. And it's still really new. So I'm curious to see kind of where it snowballs from here, but they're on a mission for sure.
It's so interesting now to see what basically retail, how it has changed so dramatically, like literally in real time, like versus where you sit back and go, oh, I remember 20 years ago, it was done like this. But to watch it, because I was saying to somebody during Magic, which is the big apparel show in Las Vegas, like what I love now seeing like all these young sellers that have online marketplaces I don't even think they have brick and mortars, but to watch them in the showroom or in the space in a temporary booth with their whole group going live, and they've already picked out the things they like. They've given them retail prices. They're showing them on somebody and they're like, okay. And they're taking orders live and then turning around in the booth still and saying, we'll take 20 packs of that. That part is mind blowing. The other part is just like, they're fearless. Like, the light stick, like everything. Like I'm on social media a lot. Like I'm comfortable doing stories. I'm not comfortable whipping out a light stick in the middle of a show floor. I mean, that is like fearless. And I think that is what is so amazing to watch this generation of influencers, whether they're influencers or just the way they're running their retail business is so incredible. Now with the TikTok space, it's going to be, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to understand too that it's one of those things you're not going to feel comfortable at first. Like, and that is totally understandable. And I always tell my clients, like, you can't get past that initial fear or awkward stage and just by doing it. And even if you're building kind of a collection of content, usually it takes anywhere from 80 to 100 videos for the algorithm to know what to do with you, where to place you, who to show your content to. And for you to really know what you like creating, what's sustainable to stay consistent. And I totally understand that this can be so overwhelming, but I always tell people who are more hesitant, like, what do you tell your ideal client? Or if someone says, what do you do? What do you have to offer me? Or if someone says, I love this piece from your boutique, what do you have that's similar? What would you tell them? What is your go-to? What is your expertise that makes you uniquely you, and what is that kind of sparkle, and capture that. So it's really interesting, like as we kind of work through that discomfort, but what helps is when you have real people responding to what you're putting out, that will kind of calm those nerves. So when you have people that say, oh my gosh, do you have any more of this dress or this top? And I saw this on so-and-so, do you have it in my size? Once you kind of make the connection, like, oh yeah, these are real people, not just a random kind of like abyss of the internet, it makes it feel more connected and more comfortable. But it definitely is, it's a crazy switch of the generations of what is kind of innate for the younger people just because they grew up with it more. And then and I feel like I'm right in the middle. I'm 37. So most of my friends don't understand what I do. They're just like, what? And they don't even know, what's going on or what I'm working on. But I've gotten in the habit of kind of sharing everything. So then I have people that I do meet with, like, oh yeah, I don't even have to go into it. They're like up to date. They already know it. So it's like starting off, if they were in my day-to-day with me. So I always encourage people, especially if you're just like, I don't know what to post, I don't want to deal with it. I always say, just document what you're doing. Even if it feels really like elementary or basic, there's always going to be people who are like, oh, I want to see how they set up this type of room or how they set up their displays here. And it can be kind of a collaborative, creative boost to be able to showcase what you're working on. And then it's not about like, oh, let me see what trends are happening or let me see, what I can create or the best reel I can make. It's literally just, what are you doing and how do you showcase that to people who want to know?
It's wild because I don't know. I think I said to you when we were talking earlier is that I've been doing whatever social media, but my Instagram followers of like, it's all word of mouth. It's kind of, and I started doing green screen reels, and I've asked stores to send in me pictures of their stores, and I'm not bashing them. It's like, tell me what your challenges are, and I will, in 30 seconds or a minute, whatever the reel is, I point out what I see, and it is insane to me how the jump of likes and views is like mind blowing. And I even said to my husband yesterday, I'm like, I've been sitting at like 2,500 followers, whatever. I mean, like low, still very low numbers. And it's like yesterday I was like, God, I'm going to be 3,000, like, which is a big mark for me because it's taken so long to freaking get here. But I got 150 new followers yesterday, and I have no idea how. Like I don't, like I said today, I don't know what has happened, like where that, and somebody said, trust me, when it starts happening, it happens really fast.
Yep. And it can happen like that. And that's why I always say also don't worry about the views or anything when you first put something out. Because right now you have to think of each piece of content as like being alive. And it could be just dormant for a while. And then all of a sudden a video could pick up and it could go. And that's also really important to understand. Like when Instagram first started, it was about your grid and your aesthetic and kind of like that was the creative.
Aesthetic's way out the window now.
Oh, yeah. And because
it bugs me.
I know. It's really, has been the hardest thing to let go of most, like if I work with boutiques and artists, that is really hard to let go. And there are ways to get around it where you can still kind of have covers that make it look a certain way. But how the content works is it's literally each individual piece of content kind of has its shot. So people can respond to that, but you have to look at that as that they can kind of do their own thing at all different times. So it's less people are going to find your profile and look at you and figure out they're going to be fed a video because based off of what they're interested in. And if it's one that connects and that people like, that's where it can blow up. And all of a sudden you have this influx of followers.
It's why, I mean, even TikTok, because I was like, I'm not doing TikTok. I'm not dancing. I'm not. And it's almost like I kind of found my groove, which is talking, I mean, what I do for a living, talking to retailers, talking about display and merchandising. And I guess some of it I thought was so mundane that I just started randomly throwing things up on TikTok because I literally have put it to the back burner. And every time I go onto it, I'm like, holy moly, like what is, I mean, and I guess it's very true. Like once you find your niche, and I have to ask you this because anybody that's spent time on TikTok and you get, things are thrown in your feed so you can see them that however that works. There are some weird ass people that have like there's an old lady, it's just her talking about, I don't even know what, she must be 75. I swear to God, she must have 500,000 followers.
Oh, 100%.
And that's what's like for the retailers or anybody, manufacturers, anybody listening to this, like you do not have to be the picture perfect.
Oh, not at all.
Real, Lord, whatever name it. Like it is like, if grandma can do it and she,
oh yeah,
that many people, I totally. Is that just because it's like people, I mean, everyone says like you find your tribe, like.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of people that, well, first of all, everyone thinks of TikTok when you immediately you're like, oh, it's a dancing app. That's what it started as. And that's nowhere near what it is now. And you have education-based content is king right now. And I think will be for quite some time. Because people are going on there not to just be entertained, but to learn and to grow and to connect with people who are doing similar things. So again, back to kind of the creation of Instagram where everything was really curated and perfected. Now that doesn't translate and kind of people, can you swear on this podcast? Is that okay?
Whoa, it's called the retail.
Okay, good. But people will call bullshit immediately. There's almost no room for that. And so the biggest creators or people that do get a following, they're not perfect or done up all the time or just putting the final product out. It's literally the people who are brave enough to just say, this is who I am. This is what I'm working on. This is what I think. This is what I know. And that's personally why I love it. And one of the things that I love most about social media in general is because like when I was growing up and the only way to be successful in music was with a record label. And it was like, if you didn't know someone or have the money to get on the radar of them, it was like obviously a very, very narrow street. But now there's been, companies with floors of a marketing department that are getting crushed by a teenager in her room sharing songs or grandmas just talking about their wisdom. And so if you can kind of get past your preconceived notions of what you think it is or what you think you have to be on that is like where it really becomes kind of cathartic or something that you can find value in, not just like, oh, I have to do a post, for my business, but really telling people who you are. And that's why influencers are influencers. And that's why it started, is because you have to trust the person to buy from them. So if you trust their expertise, you know who they are, you see what they're working on and what they're doing, you're going to be way more likely to listen to them about whatever their industry is. Or like for me, I have kind of my influencers or creators that I like their style. And so when I'm looking for new basics or, I want whatever, I'm going to go to their, whatever ones they want, I'll probably like, or whatever ones they like. So you kind of just have built this relationship and this trust. But yeah, you don't have to be anything other than exactly who you are. And the fact that the market is speaking to that is really exciting. And I think a total shift in most industries where it was always kind of, put your best foot forward and don't show the process, just show the final thing when all the hard work is done. But now if you show, you're sweating, moving displays around, all of that stuff, like that's the things that are going to make people want to be a part of your journey and that they'll remember and respond to. And so that's what it feels like, magic to me. And I think a lot of people don't talk about the community aspect and that a lot of the upsides of social media, which is truly you can connect with people who are passionate about the same stuff as you or has been through similar things. And that's fun.
The community part of it is like, I can just say just from this podcast, it's like I didn't really, I started doing lives during the pandemic, and it was just to talk to people. What are you doing? How are you pivoting? Blah, just so retailers could talk. And I called most of my friends, and then I started calling people I didn't know and just Instagram messaging them, and they were kind enough to go on. And we got busy and I put it away and then started again. And it was supposed to be just like a fun little thing. I had no idea that we were going to get the following we do or the community that it's built. And that's, to me, is the most amazing thing, to see stores who I've had on or that listen, who are having conversations within the feed with other stores or people we've had on in this community of people. And it's like I said to Dave, I never realized that what that's creating. And the community of people that will reach out to me, like if I have a bad day, like I posted something about how like one of these displays like broke and I literally fell apart. And how many people reached out? It really truly is something that you, especially at this age, at 57, it's not like you have a lot of opportunity to meet friends or new people because you just don't anymore. You're not going to school anymore. You may go to a gym and take a class. You may need next somebody you see all the time, but you certainly are not standing in a supermarket. Like, hey, how are you? Love that outfit. Let's talk. It's so eye-opening. And even me with the podcast of like what this has become, it's like, it's such an unlikely person at 50 something years old to all of a sudden be like where people recognize you and where I really love what the community aspect of it is, because I would have never had this. And I think if people think about like that, especially with the retailers talking to people like, people do fit checks and whatnot. And like, they're going to come ask you questions because like you said, they trust you, but just that community you're building just on this like free platform, it's like the sky's the limit now, it feels like.
Absolutely. And especially with content that you never know kind of what it can lead to. And I've seen, especially with my creators that have, 1 million plus followers, there's a lot of the news outlets and more traditional kind of television shows like Kelly Clarkson's show, the Today Show, things like that. They'll be reaching out because they want to like use a story about a video or something like that. But I remember it hit me like a ton of bricks. I had one creator of mine. She's hysterical, and she kind of talks about parenting and her name, Lots of Miles. She's the marathon.
I was just listening to her on a podcast the other day with a husband wife interviewed her and her like how's hers going. And I love that she is so honest and speaks her truth when it comes to politics.
Yep, that's another point that I wanted to get across is that, okay, I'll finish this one first. So anyway, so they have the Today Show reached out, wanted to talk about a post of hers. And then I was looking at the numbers that the Today Show posts got and kind of their reach. And then I looked at her numbers and it was like 4 to 6 times more. And it's just like, it's insane to me that these creators, the power dynamic is shifting from what has been conglomerates before and them having kind of the voice to the people now have, they don't have the control as much as they used to. And actually, so Ashley is her name. She's very vocal about politics. And Kamala Harris, her office reached out and wanted to talk to her and a handful of other influencers and basically gave them press access when she's in town because they got sick of traditional media either not covering things or not giving an accurate depiction of really what's going on. So they've kind of gone to people who talk about a lot of these political issues on their platform and say, hey, will you help us kind of spread this message or talk about what we're working on? And again, talking about rules changing, it used to be if it's a business or if it's your business, you don't talk about anything personal, any politics. And now you get so much more value, even if you piss off a certain percentage of people, the value that you get finding your tribe and people who are about the same cause, you get so much more value from them kind of like, yes, like jumping on board. And it's way more beneficial than to kind of stay neutral because then you're not really building an audience that is really on board, like for you necessarily.
I think a lot of people are really afraid to. I mean, I know the few times I've dipped my toe in it, like I have a sweatshirt that says Pro Row that I wore, and it was like, I'm like, oh, we lost X amount of people this time. I'm like, obviously, and it's like, I mean, everyone it's everyone's own, beliefs and whatever you believe in, like you said, the tribe. And I love her view of like the haters and like her, like, she's like, how many people go at her? And she's like, you know what, if you have nothing else better to do than come after me. And she's like, so be it. Like, it's, I just don't read those anymore.
I don't know how she handles it better than anybody else. Cause that is like, it can be hard to let that stuff go. And there are trolls and there are people who just have literally nothing better to do than just kind of shit on you. But that's a skill in itself. Kind of once you get to that point where I always think of it as a good thing. It's like, I remember I wrote when I was first doing writing for more publications, and I had gotten some comment by a guy that was like, it was negative or something like that. And she was like, congratulations, you have now reached enough people where a person or two are pissed. Like, this is kind of part of the rite of passage. So it's hard to ignore, and it more so than not for like certain people, but it's just kind of part of the territory. But I think if you really are trying to grow, and again, that's different in business too. If you have, it never used to matter what your political stance is if you are trying to grow a company. And now more and more, it's kind of like, well, where do they stand on this? And what do you stand on this? So if you're brave enough to kind of authentically put that out there, you're going to, I always say, if you get haters or you get trolls, like you're on your way. It's a good sign that you're doing something right, or at least going in the direction that you should be going.
I think a lot of retailers are very hesitant, I will say I did love Michael from Cursive. There was a lady who had a retail store that put a gay pride flag outside of her store, and she was killed. She was murdered. And a lot of the community had spoken up, but no one really, as retailers, stepped. And Michael from Cursive, who's gay and who's married, and said, I never felt like we needed to put. I mean, he said this on Instagram. I never felt like I needed to put my flag out. He said, but I really am going to be putting my flag out. Like, I just feel like, how is it you can voice your support or opinion or whatnot, and you end up dead? And he said it's just. And there's 2 people that I saw that commented on it. And I think most retailers, and it's okay. They don't want to offend their base that people are spending. So I understand that. But, when you believe in something, I really believe you should say something and step up. And you don't need to stand, in the middle of the street screaming your head off. But I still feel like it shouldn't be something that you don't talk about at all. But
right.
That's everybody's. But I think most retailers are afraid of that because.
And it's understandable. And again, it's new. And I personally agree with you on that. And I've just seen the value that comes with that, especially some of the, because Ashley will go in deep. She talks about infertility. She talks about, she volunteered at a women's health clinic for a long time. So she tells stories about that. And there are just people who are brazen about speaking out. And I feel like the stories that she gets from people who are like, I'm so glad that you said this. Or there was one, it's going to make me cry, but there's one woman where she went to a clinic and she was like, I just heard she's like, I didn't have anyone in my life that was supporting me, but I heard your voice and some of the things that you've said. And that like helped me get through the process. And so again, to have how many more people have had that experience that haven't written her and said that. So I think there's immense value when you do speak out, because the people that aren't as brave enough to will still feel less alone, will still feel heard, or like that there's some other person going through something similar. So that's been an added perk to this business that I didn't really expect, but that has been like really moving.
Oh, I love it. I need you. I can't even talk right now. Talk to us a little bit about how you work with your clientele. So if there is somebody that because you're basically an agent. So like how do you work with people, and what are some of the things you do from like the very minimal to like the people that are like the Ashleys?
Okay. So very minimal. I just actually, I'm launching this week a digital course. There's a lot of people that would come to me that weren't necessarily ready for, to go all in or to like work with brands, but especially a lot of small businesses or people that are just starting out in their company or building their personal brand. They just need to know the basics and they need help figuring out what type of content to make. So I just finished a digital course, social media starter kit, where it literally just goes through, here's all the platforms. There's examples of, I call it experience-based content. So showing instead of telling. And just kind of giving them a little bit of a blueprint so you understand how to make content, what to make content about. So I feel like that is really helpful for people. I just wanted a resource for them if they come to me for...
When does that come out?
So that will be available this Friday.
We will make sure I'll have to get a link from you. So we will put it in the show notes, because that'll be fantastic.
Yes, I will make sure you have that. And that's just a great place to start. Again, it can be very intimidating, especially if it's just a world that you're not used to. So I wanted something that was just in my voice, what I tell clients and friends all the time that come to me for advice that are just new to it. So that's kind of like the baseline. It's just, there was just such a need for it that I forced myself those last couple of weeks. I'm like, I'm getting that done. And then I work with companies and brands. So like a lot of like mid-tier companies locally that there's one in particular that I've worked with. They're called Lady Yum, and they make the best. I was not even a macaron fan. I did not like them until I had theirs. And they have 5 retail locations, and it's very female focused. The stores it's like walking into like a girl carnival. There's like flamingo feathers and champagne, and it's just really, really fun. But their social media was just kind of like, here are macaroons this month. And it was pretty, but there wasn't, the owner is so vibrant. And
it's called Lady M.
Lady Yum, YUM. But you didn't see her on a lot of the content. So we literally just spent the last 6 months making sure that we made videos that showed who she was, what her vision was, her in the stores, her telling stories about the build outs, and made sure that her spirit and her vision was what you saw when you looked at what went to their social pages. So that's my favorite part, because I literally get to go in and get to know someone and say, what's the message you want to get across? What's the most interesting way that we can tell it? And then we edit it in ways that are going to be successful on the platform. So that's what, and I don't have a ton of room for those, but those have been really beneficial. And so for those type of companies, we'll do content for them. And then we can also run paid advertising. So a lot of questions I get from more boutiques or just small business owners, mid-sized business owners is like Facebook ads worth it, or is digital marketing worth it? And my answer is yes and no. It just depends, because I've seen really great success with Facebook ads, but then also with things like TikTok Shop right now, Facebook ads is more of a long-term game, and it's a lot of figuring out what works and testing and over time and managing budgets. But you do get a really good sense of who your audience is and who's responding. So it's very helpful in that sense. But usually if your organic content is good and you're consistently posting, you're going to have growth. You're going to have engagement. And so I always tell people start there first. And then what we do is usually, if we're handling all of the content for them, if they have a piece that goes viral or a couple pieces that people are really responding to, I'll say, hey, let's try to run that as an ad on Instagram. And like I had one of my influencers did an ad for Lady Yum, and the video did really well. And we turned it into an ad, and they got like a 7x return just on that, running that video. So there are a lot of nuances and different ways to approach it based off of the brand. So that's kind of what I do with small businesses or companies. Then for the bigger guys, and someone like Ashley, who does have over 1 million followers, I will broker campaigns. So like if I had to say no to Nike this last month, and
that's the one. Is that the one?
Yes, it broke my heart. So big companies will say, hey, we have a new shoe coming out, or we have this running line coming out. Who can we kind of talk to get the message out? So they reach out and say, hey, we want Ashley to do a video for us. And they're basically paying for access to her audience. And they know that obviously her audience is going to be a lot of runners. She gets asked what running shoe she wears on probably hundreds of times a day. And so that's kind of been our biggest focus. I would love to have her design her own shoe with one of the bigger shoe companies like a Nike or Asics or something. So we're not there yet, but we're getting there. But in the meantime, they'll be like, hey, this new shoe is out, and she'll take it on a run and kind of talk about what she likes about it, what she doesn't like about it. And usually we try to make sure she likes it first. But I always tell my influencers, yeah, because we don't want it to be, again, my whole thing is like, I want it to be authentic. I want it to be people to trust them. Like, it's an important job. So I have my influencers go through what products they already use, what they already love. And so we'll reach out to those brands and say, hey, do you want to do a collaboration? So they'll either pay for a TikTok post, an Instagram post. What I've been seeing a lot lately is Instagram stories, because there's a lot of engagement. It feels a lot more organic. So some brands will be like, hey, we'll pay for 2 to 3 stories and a TikTok post. And there's a lot of combinations that go in there. But the creator doesn't necessarily know what their audience size is worth, what their engagement is worth. I had one creator, her name's Soliana Sapp, and she's hysterically funny. And she has almost 400,000 followers on Instagram, but we were going through her reels, just how many views her reels got. And we started counting them up and realizing in the last year, she's gotten over 300 million views.
Wow.
So that's a situation where if we know that, if a brand comes to her and wants her to do a reel, that price is going up, because it's not just about the follower count anymore. It's about her reach and what her videos can do as far as visibility. So I've seen companies do this really well. There's still some that don't quite understand, or they're trying to jump into it, but will be like really scripted. And there are some creators that can handle that, and some that are just like, no, it just seems too fake, or it doesn't work. Yeah. So what I do is just make sure that the creator is being protected, just like a sports agent or any sort of entertainment agent, and then making sure the brand's message is getting across in the way that we said we'd get it across, and that it's a good fit. And then just kind of making sure that those two things go hand in hand and elevate both at the same time.
For viral, what would I'm guessing part of its algorithm? What makes something quote viral? What is the total of numbers, and what is it? Is it the algorithm? What?
Yeah. So virality is, there's no specific number necessarily, but it's when a video gets a ton of attention really fast. So it could be 100,000 views, it could be 1,000,000 views, anything that kind of jumps off really quickly, like what you were saying, where all of a sudden you open up and you're like, oh my gosh, I have 500 new followers, or my video's at 500,000 views. And I think a lot of people will think, oh, the goal is to go viral. But if you have a video that does that too soon, a lot of times it can hurt instead of help. So if you haven't really been posting, you haven't really figured out what your message is, or just even the kind of content you want to post, if you have something go viral, it can get a lot of attention, but really temporarily. So I always tell people, like, even if we're posting a ton of videos and it's just kind of staying like 400 views, 500 views, just kind of staying there, I would say that doesn't matter yet. You're building the foundation, because if you're putting out content that your ideal customer would get value from, or that anyone in your industry would get value from, and you do it in your unique way, it's like the foundation of building a house. So say you have that foundation built and something goes viral and they check you out and you're like, oh my gosh, this video is really helpful. This video is really helpful. That's going to be a follower that's going to stick around and be high quality, and probably someone that's going to convert a lot more than someone who just kind of sees a one-time video of yours. And if they go to your account, there's nothing else really there for them, then there's not the sticking power.
It seems also that goes into being consistent, where people will, like my blog, like I'm really into it for a while, and then this is my side hustle. So like by far and large, my real hustle, my main job is what has to pay for this. So it means like if that job is really busy, something falls off the radar, and it's always the blog. And it's like last blog I did was say it, the breakdown of the January show. Like that is bad. And the consistency part, like how, do you, for people that are inconsistent, that are coming to you that still have, are you like, you need to break down X amount of hours? Do you tell them, make sure you do it once a day? Like,
yeah, that changes. Consistency is extremely important. Yes. I think people get a little overboard with it. Like, you have to post every day to all the platforms. I don't think that that's necessary. If I have a client that is more like on the corporate side and they're paying us for a lot of services, we'll just post it for them. So, and I've had some clients that will be really great at filming, but then would get stuck on the editing portion. So then I'll be like, okay, you just film it. I'll tell you kind of what to film, and then we can edit it for you to make sure you stay consistent. But if you're just doing it on your own, I always say pick the easiest thing. So for me personally, I used to do my own content constantly and was posting all of the time. But now that I have all these other clients, like that's the one thing, like your blog, that kind of gets pushed to the wayside. But the one thing I can stay consistent with is my Instagram stories, because I know there's at least a couple times throughout the day where I can update what I'm working on, what's going on. Or I like to talk about being a mom and pursuing these big career goals. Like, it sucks and it's hard, and there's a lot of, I didn't see a lot of examples of that growing up. And so I try to be really honest with that. Like, even doing this podcast, I had to like shove my kid off with the neighbor and he was pissed about it, but it's like, this is just part of what has to be done. So and I will share those things on stories. So that is the relatable thing that I can consistently do. But then I haven't posted on Instagram like a reel for 2 weeks. So I would say explore the different areas of the app, find what is going to be easy for you to be consistent with. And if it's, hey, I'm going to do one reel a week, great, start there. Or one video, or I'm going to share one tip of knowledge every week. So you start there, and you kind of, once you get in the habit of that, it gets easier to come up with more video ideas. It's just, as you go through life, you have more kind of light bulb moments of, oh, this could be a good post. I'm going to make sure that I film a time lapse of us setting up this display or something like that. So I know it's not a really specific answer, but it's really about, you do need to stay consistent, but just find something that is easy for you to stay consistent with and build from there. And it doesn't need to be something that is so stressful or that adds to your workload, but just something that you just want to showcase what you're doing and finding a way to do that. And Instagram stories is great, especially if you're kind of more hesitant about being on camera or you want it to be more perfect. Because it's gone in 24 hours, it feels a little bit less consequential. So you can do that on TikTok and Instagram too. So if you're experimenting with TikTok, but you don't really know what kind of videos you want to make yet, you can just do a couple posts on stories and see how that works out. So,
I just had it in my head. This is what happens. Like,
I know.
It's really bad. Do you have a lot of clients that go live, and are there any tips? Because I know we've had a couple marketing people, and she had said, look, if you go live, I'm going to wait till a couple more people come on, because that's always when I check out. It's like, I can't fucking wait. Like, are you going live or are you not? Like,
yeah.
And the other part is that no one has any idea of how many people are there. So she always says, like, act like there's 100 people in the room. Oh, haha, yes, that's the picture of, my son drew it for me. Thanks for asking. She's like, there's no one on. And she goes, because it stays on your feed, people will still see it. But again, like, no one knows how many people are watching. So you act.
Mm-hmm. And you have the little ticker number. And even if it's 2 to 4 people, know that people are coming in and out. But then after, you have like 400 people stop by. And so I always say, like, even if it's just a couple people that you're seeing in the moment, and you can choose whether you want it on your feed or whether you don't too. So that's always helpful, but you can still see all the analytics at the end. But even if it's 12 people, like say there's 12 people total that watched your live. If you were in a room with 12 people who were there to listen to what you had to say, like, how would you handle that? And I think mentally going from what you would be like normally in a room full of 12 people, because you would still give them that time of day and value and speak to them in a kind of more intentional way. But if it's live and it's like coming in and out, it's a lot easier to kind of get in your head about it. So I absolutely agree with her. You just go with it and engage as much as you can. But the beauty of live is that it is so, you don't have to have something planned. You don't have to have it scripted out. Like, you literally can just be working on something boring. And some of the most successful lives right now are people like hanging out, listening to music or playing music or editing something. That's like why Twitch is popular. It's literally just, you go live when you're doing your work, whatever that looks like. And people that are interested in that are going to watch it and ask you questions like, oh, what shortcut did you use and you edited that? Or how do you get the vocals to sound like that? So anytime that you even have like a longer, even if like a more boring task, if you can just set up your phone and go live. And a lot of, especially TikTok right now, and if you're talking about your shop, they're highly, highly prioritizing the lives, and the apps will tell you what they want. So like for TikTok right now, if you go on and talk about your shop, and those are the videos that are getting massive run. If you like any product in your shop, if you go, that literally said in the TikTok Academy, if you go live and you have a shop link attached to your live, they are going to push the shit out of that. Like, they are going to prioritize that. And so you can utilize kind of work with the algorithm, with the app of what they want, and they're going to reward you for it.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So like I always say, don't let whatever preconceived notions or insecurities that you have of what it will be get in the way of what it will actually be, which is connection, giving value, and it's practice. Like, you just look at each one of these things as practice. You'll get more and more comfortable each time. You'll get it will get easier and you'll think of it more the more you do. So even if there's two people, then just enjoy having those two people in there and just talk about what you're doing. Yeah.
I think people also, I think all of us overthink what would be, quote, interesting. And I know, like, for me, especially, like, I watch other merchandisers talk about, like, and here's the tips on your going to your first day at market. You know, here's registration. I'm like, who the fuck doesn't know that? But apparently there's a lot. I overthink, like, you know, I literally would be like, okay, what are we going to talk about today? What am I going to talk about today? And it's like, you know, I forget that, like, not everybody, especially by some of the questions I get on merchandising, it's like, obviously, like, it's what I think is mundane and what I think is, like, not that important is really, like, people really do want to hear it. So I think a lot of people, for retailers, like, don't overthink it. Like, just go on. What are your, okay, really quick before I forget, what the hell is TikTok Academy?
So TikTok has a live seller. It's called a Seller Academy because TikTok Shop is still really new. And it is annoying. We've had some issues with connecting Shopify. There are some clients that have Shopify that it can be annoying to connect, but then other clients have set it up and, like, been on a run. So they have things called the Seller Academy, TikTok Academy, where it literally, if you can go through what they're trying to teach you, and they're telling you, this is what we want. This is what we're going to prioritize. And then you can go through that and think, okay, how does that work for me or my business? Or even like for stores and boutiques, if you have a limited run of something, you can do a flash sale and get it all sold like that. So you can go on the live and say, hey, we only have 12 more of, you know, these blazers or this.
God, that's brilliant.
Yeah. And so then it's a situation where, because there has been, like, if I'm working with a smaller boutique, we don't necessarily want to run ads on pieces they don't have anymore. And so if shops utilize the live, you're going to be able to sell through all of your product and that you want in a way where you can kind of do it instantly and it's interactive. It's like, why do you wake up at 2 a.m. and watch QD? Like, or even the things I always think when people are like, oh, it's not interesting or it's going to be boring. I'm like, what is the most boring thing that you watch? And, like, you go through your head of the things you get sucked into. You're like, yeah, why do I? And, like, why that? Even if you're not interested in the product, you're just watching them talk about it. But I would just say for any boutique or shop, if you have any limited inventory at all, a live sale, a flash sale is a great way to sell through all of it. And then the viewer has the urgency of, oh my gosh, it's going to be gone if I don't buy it right now.
So that's amazing. That right there is the biggest nugget for everyone listening. Like, just to be able to go TikTok Academy and to be able to, like, because again, like, it's also new. No one really has heard about it, but the fact that, like, everybody is stuck with, like, the final 1, 2, 12, or you have a whole bomb of something that you bought that, you know, didn't sell at all. That is brilliant. Wow.
Well, and I found with working with smaller boutiques, like in my area, you wouldn't want to necessarily, oh my gosh, now I can't talk. You wouldn't want to necessarily run ads, like longer term ads, with a piece that you don't have in your store anymore. So that's something where with live selling, you literally, it plays into your industry and that industry of, okay, what do we have and how can we get rid of it in the most engaging way? And then you keep doing that every time you have a short run of something. Like, people are you're gonna, ooh, what do they have? What do they have now? And I would highly, highly encourage all retail owners to utilize live stream, especially because they're prioritizing it. So you're going to get a lot of views and just more run than you normally would.
What about your thoughts on YouTube?
I think there's value there. I think it's interesting since I've been in the TikTok world so much. That going to YouTube, it kind of feels a little bit like when you're used to streaming and you watch TV. Like, it's a little bit of, but there's definitely a place for longer form content. It's harder to get subscribers, but they're really valuable. Like, you do get a subscriber, they usually stick with you. And so I think it's important, but not necessary. I think, again, going back to what's going to be easiest to be consistent for you. If YouTube is your thing, great, run with it. again, there's a lot of value there. I would still do short form content on YouTube Shorts. And all you have to, if you're doing YouTube and you have longer form content, then all your socials are done for you, because literally you just take pieces from your YouTube video and that's your short, put captions on it, and then just put little 45-second clips across platforms like, as a reel, as a TikTok. And then that's kind of the nice thing. So any clients of mine that do have YouTube, I just say, great, here's your new episode. Let's make 20 posts out of it. So that's the perk of doing it.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, saves you a lot of time. And then you can just pull the most interesting pieces. And what's crazy, again, going back to TikTok Live, there was one, it was like I think she was selling purses or bags. And they have things in there now where you could do a giveaway, and they will run the giveaway for you and choose the winner for you. So there's so many things that are in here that are helpful, where it's like, I don't know how to do this. And then they will go and pull. So if you're going on YouTube, you'd watch it and say, I think this clip is interesting. I think this one would do well. And then for TikTok Live, they will go through your whole live and they will pull the pieces that had the most engagement and the most people watching. Like, oh, this piece did really well. And then you can use that as an individual post too.
Wow, that is just the amount of value that you just brought, like TikTok, I think everyone is going to be with their mouth on the floor on TikTok, because I think everybody's still, especially people my age, like it's like the dancing. But I mean, like I said, like I'm even realizing with what little bits I'm dropping on it, just like the change of numbers, that it's like, okay, obviously I need to be on this more now that you're saying, I'm like, oh my God, I need to go.
It will tell you what to do. And like, if you play their game, they will reward you greatly. Yeah,
I will play. Okay, so what is a big no-no, and what has created an epic fail for somebody on TikTok or social media?
The biggest thing is, especially when you're first starting out, is dead space or dead air. So if you if you come on and if my reel is, hi, let me tell you about blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's a scroll. So you have three seconds. Any long intro is usually not going to work. You usually have 3 seconds to grab somebody's attention. So even if there's a lot of editing tricks where you can start with the most interesting part of the story, or like a cliffhanger-y thing in the first 3 seconds, and then start from the beginning. So a big no-no would just be being really inauthentic, being really fake. Trying to think if there's any like big failures that we've had. Luckily, I tend to work with influencers and clients that I just genuinely like too. So it's hard to be like, I don't know. So I would say, yeah, any long form that has a lot of kind of breaks in there, you don't want to do that on TikTok or Reels. But it's still that, like, long form content is still valuable, but you just want to have it mostly between 45 seconds and a minute. But again, that could, if they start prioritizing that based off of, there's so much competition in between apps that it's really interesting to see how they work together. Oh, another no-no is don't share, say you make a TikTok and then you share that TikTok to Reels and it has a little watermark.
Oh yeah. And
that it happens a lot. So don't like beat yourself up if you haven't done it, but they'll deprioritize your content because they know it was made on another app. So same goes either way. So don't post a TikTok video on an Instagram reel, or don't repost a reel onto TikTok if you're going for engagement and numbers. Like I said, it's not the end of the world if you do that. But that's the kind of the great part of it, is there's not a lot of fails. Even if a video doesn't do anything, it could later. You just never know. So I would just say don't get caught up in the numbers, or a lot of times people will be really serious about it, really focused, and they'll post for a week or two and then be like, well, this isn't getting any traction, or I'm not being successful, and then they'll quit. Yeah. So again, speaking of the consistency piece, don't do it for the numbers when you're first starting out. Like you have to figure out what type of content can be consistent with what feels good to make and what people are going to respond to, because you don't really know until you get there. So for like my husband, he does like cannabis education, but people are really interested. He has a little binder that talks about each terpene and what it does. And so he would post a video about that and people would ask for more. So a lot of his content kind of bent towards that. So you just kind of listen and evolve and figure out what's going to work best for both the viewer and for you.
Interesting your husband does that because I'm interviewing, there's a store that opened in Atlanta and it came across my feed because the designer that created it, and I started like digging. It's called Soberish. And it's non-alcoholic drinks. And then because Atlanta is THC is not legal, so it's the hemp drive. So it's all of that. So that's why it's sober-ish. But I can't wait to have her because it's whether it's legal in your state or it's not legal, weed is part of the culture now. And it's like, that when I was at New York Now last year, there was a guy we met who I adored his whole brand. It's called Dad Grass. And it's like all of just like, it's same thing. It's hemp derived and but his marketing was so good. He actually works with one of the Beatles, George Harrison. Is that?
Oh, cool.
He did a collab with him, but it's like, it's that whole culture and the non-drinking, like it's so cool to see that happening and to hear that it's kind of
it's really interesting. And now especially, and that's been a challenge on social media because you can get shut down, your account can get flagged. So a lot of cannabis creators have had a really hard time just to kind of stay in the realm, even though their content is doing so well, because people are curious and want the education and know kind of what they're getting into. But and I may say this wrong, but the Department of Health and is it Human Services, something like that, whoever decides what's healthy and drug things, they basically recommended that because right now it's a Schedule I drug, which is why it can't go into, which means there's no health benefit at all. So they just recommended to like the FDA and the Biden administration, like, hey, we recommend this as a Schedule III, which is where I think it's like Tylenol with codeine. It's kind of basically saying there are health benefits to this that needs to be studied. So that's going to open up a lot of doors as far as actual studies that can be done, what it actually does. And I think will kind of alleviate a lot of people's fear of like maybe being involved with it. But the sober, and in Seattle, it's been legal for a while. But I drink a lot less now because I'd rather just have a little gummy and sleep really well and then wake up and I'm not hungover. But the whole sober curiosity thing has been huge. And I think that's why his terpene gems are doing so well. And that's the product he has on the TikTok shop. And it's literally just the elements of the plant that have been around forever. Like the same things that are like in lavender, in their calm gem and things like that, where it's calm, creative, energetic, and social. So it kind of helps take the edges off, but there's no, there's no high. Anyway, but
gummy thing, it's so funny. It's like we're so going off.
I know. We're like, and then we can talk about this.
But it's a gummy thing is like everyone I know, like that doesn't smoke or anything like that. Like everyone, especially my age, like we're all down with the sleep gummies. It's like, none of us are sleeping anymore. And I swear to God, that's the only thing.
Well, and there's a creator that they have. She has a brand under my husband's company. It's called Mama Needs a Minute. And her whole thing is kind of like, let's destigmatize this, and kind of go. She had a hard time with alcohol and she went to cannabis and she was like, it makes me much better mom, all of this stuff. Anyway, but back to the social media point is that I would get so many questions of my friends. They're like, will you ask Jake about this or ask Jake about this? Or I'm struggling. I have cancer. Like, what do you recommend? And it became like a plug and play email. And then I just told him, I was like, you have to just make videos about this. Again, take all the questions people are asking you all the time and just make videos addressing it. And now he's he listened and he is successful now in that.
Like, what was his number when you first were like, okay, let's do this, and you started to like, what was his number then, and then what's it now? I mean, it's 100,000.
Yeah, so it was 0, and he learned a lot from like he would help. He's a fantastic videographer, and so he would do a lot of my music stuff, and he would help set up all the lives for me. And but he wasn't necessarily comfortable being on camera, and he's very like needs to plan everything out, and that is not how I am. I'm like, let's go, let's get everything. So I liked more off the cuff things. So he helped me do it for about a year. And then I was like, you got to just get on the camera. And now he's like way better than me. He's like way more direct. His videos have like way more purpose, where I'm just like, blah, 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 blah. This is what we're doing. So he didn't have any social media presence at all. And now I think he just hit like 94,000 followers on TikTok last night or the other.
That is amazing. Okay, I asked everybody, because I've kept you so long already, asked everybody the same 2 questions at the end. Not always, but you're creative. Where do you get creative inspiration?
Honestly, I get a lot of creative inspiration from TV shows. And I've just always loved shows. So especially ones that kind of like break the mold a little bit, and especially with streaming and shows on Apple, I like to see what kind of people have more freedom when they're not like in a network show, kind of what things they create, what stories they tell. And then music-wise, I usually always get inspired or a song idea either on a run or in the shower.
Shower, but big one.
Yeah. So those would be my answers for that one.
And then, not that you haven't given everybody enough information already, but like, what is a piece of advice you would give to somebody that is still, even after listening to this, a little bit gun shy on TikTok?
I would say, and this is in my digital course as well, I said, and I tell this to all of my creators all the time, nobody cares. Like, nobody cares if you have a zit, if your hair isn't washed, if you have a messy background. Nobody cares. Like, you care, and don't let that keep you from telling the story you're going to tell or share anything you want to say. Like, even if you have to tell yourself before you do it, like, nobody cares, and then just go for it. That's kind of the thing I repeat over and over. And you know what? Then if you're self-conscious, like, throw a filter, that there's no crime in just having a little filter. They have little subtle ones where your face isn't all weird and different. But yeah, I would just say just tell yourself no one cares, and just talk to the camera like it's your friend, like it's your client. That is usually the best. Even if you get in your head and be like, what would I say to my friend if they asked me this question? And then go.
All right, retailers, you heard it here. Get on camera, and remember, nobody cares. Thank you so much, Susan, for your time. I can't tell you how much I enjoy this conversation.
Good. No, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on.
And tell everybody your socials and how to get a hold of you.
So you can go to Mediary Marketing, Mediary, Mediary Marketing, and that's on our socials. And then you can find me at Susan G Official on all the socials.
And you also have a podcast.
I do. It started with my husband and I, and now I've turned it into a Mediary podcast. That's like my blog that I am not as consistent with.
I still want to say it.
Yeah. So yes, we do have a Mediary podcast called Under the Influence, and you can find that on Apple Podcasts or anywhere where podcasts are listenable.
Oh my gosh. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.